So, you think that your teen daughter is just busy working on her computer. She's doing research for an upcoming paper. Well, what if you were wrong? And instead, you discovered that she was spending hours a day secretly chatting on the internet with a man who was not only seducing her, but encouraging her to run away from home to be with him. Today, you're going to hear from girls as young as 13 who say that they were lured away by a stranger that they met online, and that it was the most frightening and devastating experience they ever had. You're also going to meet a woman who says that her life was practically destroyed after she was stalked online for over a year and had her name and her phone number placed in sexual ads all over the world. She says if something like this can happen to an ordinary person like her, it can certainly happen to you. And later, you're going to find out what happened when a Sally staffer went undercover on the internet, pretended that he was a 13-year-old girl. He was a girl. The response he got is going to shock you. He thought that this was just a very interesting way to meet people 2 years ago. She had no idea that having an innocent conversation with a man that she met on the internet would turn her life into a living hell. Can the computer do that to you? Today, Vicky is on the run. She lives in fear because this man has been stalking her and threatening to find her no matter what. You met this man online at a particularly vulnerable time of your life, is that right?
Yeah, let me give you some background. I came from a very emotional, abusive home, so I always grew up not feeling very good about myself or anybody. I didn't think I was pretty. I thought I was ugly. I didn't think much about myself. And then I got married, and after my marriage broke up, I got on the internet thinking that they can't see me. They won't know that I'm ugly and stupid.
Right.
And they'll talk to me. Because you go on there, they're all going to talk to you. No matter what, they're going to talk to you. And I met this man, and I thought he was wonderful.
He portrayed himself as kind of like the perfect man.
Prince Charming.
What kind of things would he say, Vicky?
Oh, he'd call me 3 times a day just to say I love you. He would send me flowers over the email, which people are surprised, but they can do that. He would tell me that I was the most beautiful person in the world.
Wow, what a drug.
For somebody that didn't feel good about themselves, you know.
Even for somebody who feels good about themselves, to be told somebody loves you 3 times a day and all of that attention. And then you met him in person.
Yeah.
What happened?
The first month, it was fine. It was wonderful. He was everything he portrayed.
For educational purposes. I have a friend that's online, so she talked me into putting online in about May. And we would go into the various chat rooms, and there are some good people in the chat rooms, but gradually but slowly I started to notice a change in my daughter's attitude. And she had hooked up with a BBS, which is a bulletin board service, which what you need actually for that is just a modem. Gradually but slowly, she got more and more involved with this. And I'd say probably about maybe the middle of August, about the 1st of August, she brought a man over to ask if she could date him. And my daughters are not allowed to date till they are 16, and she had just turned 16 at the end of May.
Okay.
And I took a look at this gentleman and knew right away that he was much older than what he was telling me, and we said no. And that's when the nightmare began. He began to start stealing my child out of my home. Not stealing her, but sneaking. She was sneaking out. Every night she'd start sneaking out. And
let me go to Jamie for a minute. Jamie, you started a secret relationship with this guy. You met him on the internet?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. How did you do this? How did
I do it?
Yeah.
I just talked to him on the phone. I talked to him on the BBS all the time, constantly. He was always on my mind. There wasn't a part of the day that he wasn't. I was either talking on the phone with him, on computer, or with him. He was my life at this point. I was always thinking of him. I was always talking on the phone with him, or I was always on the computer with him.
You say the guy had you under his control and
Yes,
made
he
you
did.
believe that he loved you.
He told me he loved me. He promised me children. He said he was going to marry me as soon as my parents would have allowed it, or until I turned 18. The day of my birthday, supposedly we were supposed to go.
Was it the 13th? 13-year-old Summer and her 15-year-old friend, Casey, ran away from home with a man they met on the internet. Summer's friend, Casey, never returned home. She married the guy. This is a very shocking story, and it did make headlines. Summer, take us back and explain how in the world two girls this young, 13, could get involved in this.
Well, we got on the internet, and it turned out that she had been talking to this guy named.
Right.
They were really very involved with each other. And
In what kind of a chat room?
It was called Vampire.
Vampire chat room?
It was based on the book Vampire the Masquerade.
Somebody go home and take that computer away from my son very quickly. What happens in the vampire chat room?
It was really very scary at first. People would sit around and drink blood on the game, in which I thought it was role-playing. At least I thought so. And Casey informed me, this is just role-playing. You'll get the hang of it. And she had been talking about running away with him.
With whom?
The guy that she had met in the vampire chat room. And I didn't believe her. I said, no, you're crazy. You ain't going nowhere.
You think it's role-playing. She's telling you that a man is going to come and get her? Where's he coming from?
He's coming from 8 states away in Reno, Nevada.
You live where?
In South Carolina.
And it happened in the most innocent way.
Well,
What happened?
was I married to a Marine, and we were in Japan for 3 years. And
You were a writer, right?
Yes, I have published 6 books while over there.
Now, there's a woman who's published 6 books. She's a writer, and she lives in Japan. Cool, no problem.
We moved back to the States, and I felt it was time to start looking for an agent, and I was still a little bit new to the internet. And this was a year ago, January, and I saw on one of the news groups, which is different from chat rooms. It's more like a message board, and you can read what people write and reply to it. And I found a post or a message that was from a literary agency, and so I said, well, this looks kind of interesting. They're saying they're looking for new authors, so I called the phone number, spoke to a gentleman, explained what I'd done. He said, send a proposal, and I did. About 3 to 4 days later, I get an answer, and I was like, well, this is awfully fast. So I read the letter, and it said, this is the most professional proposal.
You've written 6 books. It ought to be professional.
Yeah, it was a professional proposal, and yes, we'd love to represent you. Now send us a $75 reading fee. And I'm thinking, well, I know agents don't charge reading fees. They take a percentage when they sign you to a contract. So I wrote back a letter saying, I want my book proposal back. You misled me. You did not say anything in your post. You did not say anything on the phone when I asked you what I needed to send you. And after that, I got onto another writing news group and said, this is what happened to me. Does anybody know anything about this place?
Well, that makes sense, because you're talking to other writers. And by the way, for those of you who are listening, you're not supposed to pay these people to read your book.
Or edit.
Or edit. So what happened?
A lot of the writers wrote back to me and said, we know about this place. What they do is something called spamming. And what that is they would send that one ad to hundreds of news groups at a time with no regard as to what the news...
Jeff is on our staff. He is getting credit working with us for this semester. Jeff has admitted to us when we were putting together this show that he spends a lot of the time on the computer. So we decided to have Jeff go undercover and do detective work for us. I mean, if that's his specialty, we'll use him. Here's what we did. Last week, Jeff went online. He pretended to be a 13-year-old girl named Jessica. Sally, Jessy Raphael. Make him Jessica. We were curious to see what kinds of things would happen to this 13-year-old young teen girl who decided to go on the internet. Tell us exactly what you did first, Jeff. This is the mod squad of the internet. What is Cyber Angels?
Sally, Cyber Angels is a an internet safety organization made up of volunteers all over the world, from people who use computers. A lot of us are very experienced online, and our basic
Romance, cyber sex, your guide to affairs of the net. Michael, it's still a mystery to me why so many people are looking for love on the internet. Will you explain the appeal?
Well, you know, Sally...
You have never seen these people.
That's true, and there's a very powerful fantasy component to these kinds of relationships that take place online.
Because you can be anything and say anything.
You can be anything and say anything. You know, and originally and initially, all you have to go from is text-driven information. You go from what the person is writing to you. And you have to draw that picture in for yourself. What is that person really like? What's their personality really like? What do they look like? What are they like?